We'd like to call this evening's meeting of the Peoria City Council to order. Welcome H. Wayne Wilson and his listening audience at WCBU as well as Cable Channel 22. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, please? The council mics are open.
Mayor Artis.
Here.
Councilmember Akeson. Councilmember Sear. Here. Councilmember Grayeb. Councilmember Jensen. Here. Councilmember Montalongo. Here. Councilmember Moore.
Here.
Councilmember Euler.
Here.
Councilmember Riggenbach.
Here.
Councilmember Ruckriegel.
Here.
Councilmember Turner.
Present.
You have a quorum present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'd like to ask everyone to join us and stand for a moment of silent prayer or silent reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Sear.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Move to approve the minutes of the regular City Council meeting held on July 10th, 2018, as printed.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilmember Turner. Are there any corrections or changes to the minutes? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Yes, we are in the township portion of the meeting. 18-217 is a communication from the town officials with a request to approve the monthly anticipated expenditures for August 2018 for the town of the city of Peoria.
Thank you. Trustee Turner.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve, seconded by Trustee Sear. Discussion on this item. Seeing none, please cast your ballots. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
18-218 is the Town of the City of Peoria financial report for the period ending 6/30/2018, which is the end of the first quarter, with a request to receive and file.
Yeah, thank you. Trustee Turner.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve, seconded by Trustee Sear. Discussion on this item. Seeing none, please cast your ballots. That motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
18-219 is a communication from the town officials of the town of the city of Peoria with a request to receive and file the town of the city of Peoria financial report dated March 31, 2018, and this is the final report that came at the annual town meeting in April.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Turner. Motion to receive and file, seconded by Trustee Ruckriegel. Is there discussion on this item? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
We're at the consent agenda. 18-220 is a communication from the City Manager and Corporation Council with a request to approve a settlement with Stark Excavating in the amount of $197,500. 18-221 is a request to approve a settlement with Daniel Jackson in the amount of $225,000. 18-222 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Public Works with a request for the following. A is to approve a contract with Rearig Pacific Company for a garbage cart audit and cart management software in an amount not to exceed $240,675. And B is to approve a contract with Rearig Pacific Company in an amount not to exceed $36,715 to purchase new 95-gallon garbage carts for replacement and inventory. 18-223 is a request to accept the low bid of corrective asphalt materials and award a construction contract in the amount of $39,835 for the base bid plus 10% contingency for the CRF contract 2018. 18-224 is a request to accept the low bid of R.A. Cullinan & Son and award a construction contract in the amount of $242,393 for the base bid plus 10% contingency for the seal coating contract 2018. 18-211 is a request to adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 26 of the Code of the City of Peoria regarding streets, sidewalks, and other public places to include Article 10, small cell antenna tower right-of-way siting, and this is a revised ordinance from the last time it came to council. 18-212 is a request to adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 5, Section 5-296 and 5-264 of the City Code pertaining to designation as unfit for human habitation and criminal housing management. And for this item, there is a yellow copy on your desk which combines the two ordinances into one, and it's just more of a format item rather than a change of any language. 18-225 is a request to concur with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt an ordinance approving a special use in a Class CN neighborhood commercial district for vehicle repair and service for property at 705 Northwestern Avenue. 18-226 is a request to adopt an ordinance amending Article 3 of Chapter 26 of the Code relating to streets, sidewalks, and other public places to include additional limitations on poles in the jurisdiction of the Public Works Department. 18-227 is a request to approve the site application for a Class B restaurant 50% food liquor license with a retail sale of alcohol at Untamed Chef, 7338 North University, with a recommendation from the Liquor Commission to approve. 18-228 is a request to approve the site application requesting to add a subclass 1A 2 a.m. closing hours at LA Connection 1219 Southwestern with a recommendation from the Liquor Commission to approve. And 18-235 is the report from the City Treasurer, Patrick Nichtine, for the month of June 2018 with a request to receive and file, and that completes your consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any items to remove from consent this evening? Councilwoman Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Items 18-223 and 18-224. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sear.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 18-227, please.
227. Thank you. Any other items to remove from consent? Seeing none, we have the motion to approve the remaining items. Councilman Euler, seconded Councilwoman Jensen. Please cast your ballots. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
18-223 is the low bid of corrective asphalt materials for the CRF contract 2018.
Thank you. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I intend to move for approval on this item, but the reason for pulling this item in 224 is to ask Director Reese to explain to us, in the communication it indicated that in 2017 these companies met their goal of minority participation in the contracting, and I'd like for him to explain how that happens, if we just trust what they say or if we trust and verify.
Thank you. We trust and verify. We have a contract with a company called ePrism Soft. which has a software where all the contractors have to submit certified payrolls. And that's actually part of an executive order under Illinois that they have to prove that they're paying prevailing wage. But part of that is they break down the ethnic background of each one of their workers and the sex of their workers. And then we run a monthly report, and it gives us the monthly workforce analysis, which breaks down their participation. And then we can do that for the whole project. So for last year, for the CRF contract, they had 24.93% minority hours. And for the seal coating project, they had 18.47% minority hours worked on the job.
Thank you, Mr. Director. With that, I'd like to move for approval.
Okay. Motion to approve, seconded by Councilmember Turner. Is there any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
18-224 is the request to accept the low bid of R.A. Cullinan and Son for seal coating contract 2018.
Thank you. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The director has already given us the information for this business as well, but I think it's pertinent. It's important to highlight to those who would try to respond to bids that we put out that we will be asking and we will be checking. With that, I'd like to move for approval.
Motion to approve, seconded Councilmember Turner. Additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
18-227 is the request to approve the site application for a Class B liquor license at Untamed Chef on 7338 North University.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Sear.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Move to defer 2 weeks, please.
Motion to defer, seconded Councilmember Ruckriegel. Discussion on the deferral. Seeing none, please cast your ballots. That motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
We're at regular business. 18-229 is a request to receive and file the 2017 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report audited by Clifton Larson Allen, LLP.
Director Scroggins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This evening we have Adam Pulley from Clifton Larson Allen. He's a managing partner on our audit, here to do a brief presentation. But before we get started, I just kind of wanted to recap what was delivered to you on the 10th and or before. The large report was the CAFR, which he will be summarizing some information from today. You also received a TIF report and a single audit report, along with two reports for each pension fund. The pension funds were done by Sikich. They're separate, but they're rolled up into the CAFR. So I just want to give you an overview of what you had received. And from there, I'm going to let Adam take over and do his presentation.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jim. As Jim mentioned, I'm Adam Pulley with Clifton Larson Allen. I'm the engagement principal in charge of the audit for 2017. I'm actually joined by Lindsay Samp here, who is the manager on the engagement. As Jim mentioned, there were a number of reports that got issued. Rather than going through each of those, I believe in front of you, you should have this document, and I will be going through that at a very high level. So with that in mind, I'm going to flip to the second page here, kind of hit some highlights. If you were to look through the CAFR or the big report, on page 1 is where you would find our audit report, where we issued an unmodified or a clean opinion on the financial statements. This is the best opinion that we can give. Page 4 is where you would see the management's discussion and analysis. And obviously the CAFR is a very big document. If you wanted to find a good spot to get a good summary of what occurred during the fiscal year, I would recommend looking over the management's discussion and analysis in conjunction with the transmittal letter. Page 15 would start the government-wide statements or on the full accrual basis. This is where it would be noted that assets plus deferred outflows for the city as of December 31st, 2017 was at $489 million. On the flip side, liabilities plus deferred inflows was at $676 million, leading to a deficit position of $187 million on the full accrual basis. So that results in a change in that position of a loss of $28 million in this year compared to $38 million in the prior year. On page 19 is the fund financial statements. This is on the modified accrual basis. So to say it in as simple terms, I suppose, is more short-term focused. So this excludes any long-term debt, capital asset activity. It lists out the different major funds, governmental funds, which would be the general, IMRF, capital improvement, police and fire pension levy fund, same as prior year. The change in total fund balances of decrease of $13 million compared to $6 million in the prior year. Now the next 3 pages, I'm on page 3 now, are more or less for reference. We'll go through them pretty quickly. The first page here, page 3, is the revenue of all the governmental funds. Last year, that total revenue was $165.5 million. This year, it's gone up a little bit to $167.6 million. You can see the breakdown of the different types, classifications of revenue, being taxes, intergovernmental, so on and so forth. The total revenue increase in most categories. It increased in the increase in taxes was mainly due to an increase in the police and fire pension levy, as well as the 0.25% home rule sales tax increase, which had occurred a little while ago, but it had a full year's impact in 2017. Now, next page 4 is looking at expenditures by function. I realize it's a fairly busy slide here, but again, it's more or less for reference. You can see towards the top of the graph that the expenditures stayed relatively steady compared to last year. The increases that occurred in public safety costs, mostly due to wage increases in the fire and police, as well as termination payouts. There were also increases in library costs regarding health insurance. They were offset by decreases in city administration, the community development, and general government capital outlay. The next page is fund balances of all the governmental funds. They're broken out by major fund, as well as to the far right, all the non-major funds group up into one. The decrease in fund balance will focus on the general fund, as that general fund did decrease about $5 million from last year to this year. The decrease was due to $600,000 decrease in licenses and permits, $600,000 decrease in state income taxes, and also increases in public safety expenses that were mentioned on the previous slide there. The actual revenues as well for the general fund during 2017 came in about $6 million under budget. So the next page touches on the single audit report. This is where we audit the federal grants. There were no federal award findings that we came across in the 2 federal major programs we tested, being Community Development Block Grant as well as the Revolving Loan Fund. We did issue a clean or an unmodified opinion on this report. We did come across 2 material weaknesses that we noted, one being that we had audit adjustments that we proposed that needed to be made, and they were primarily to help convert the modified accrual to the full accrual statements. And then there was also a lack of segregation of duties over the IT systems, because the majority of the finance users in the general ledger system have access to a lot of different aspects. So for both of those, we understand that the new system that is currently being implemented by the city will help to alleviate both of these items going forward. I'll try to go quick on these last couple pages here. The next slide, page 7, is a management letter, where this is where we would note any other recommendations we came across during the audit. This would not rise to any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. During our census data testing, we noted 1 out of 22 individuals testing the police pension had higher dates different than what was reported to the Department of Insurance, and a similar item over post-employment benefits. Again, this is not material to the financial statements, but because we came across it, we wanted to communicate that. Lastly, we issued the governance letter. This is largely boilerplate language. We would note if there were any changes to significant accounting policies, which there were none in the current year. There were a few significant audit estimates, mostly relating to pension and other post-employment benefits. And it also attaches any audit adjustments that we had during the year to this letter. We would note if there were any disagreements with management during the year. I'm happy to say that there were none. So that is primarily my presentation. I do want to take a moment to thank management of the city for their assistance during the audit this year. They made it very clear. The finance department wanted to issue the audit and all the reports by the end of June. And if it wasn't for their efforts, they made a lot of effort this year, that wouldn't have happened. So we are 2 months ahead of when it was issued in the prior year. That's all I had. Thank you very much.
Okay, do we have any questions for Mr. Scroggins or Mr. Pulley? Councilmember Sear. No? Your light was on. Okay, Councilman Ruckriegel.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your timely work on this. I know it takes a lot of partners to be able to pull this together, and to be able to have this in our hands when we did, I think, is valuable information, especially with the current year that we're in. Just a couple of quick questions, and maybe for Mr. Scroggins, this would be maybe more towards you. In the audit report, we do mention our policy of having 25% of unencumbered reserves set aside. Can you just kind of walk me through maybe when the last time we were hitting that policy and kind of where we have gone from maybe that point to where we are today?
The last time that we achieved the 25% policy, I mean, the highest I can remember was like 24%. We weren't quite there, but that would have been 2000. I want to say 6, 7, somewhere in there. And we've been slowly, after 2009, we were starting to recover, and then the last couple of years, it's decreased.
And part of the budget, I know that we've got in front of us this year, is to sort of replenish part of that and maybe make a movement in the positive direction on there. On current lawsuits that may be at the end of the year that would have been maybe settled and not paid out, or that might be in the pipelines, would they show up anywhere in either a footnote or anything in the audit report, or would those be catching up to us later on?
So let's just talk and clarify the question is if there was a liability that was known prior to the issuance but was after the year. Maybe Adam can help me on this. I know that we put some things in the footnotes, but I don't know if we record some things as well.
So in the footnotes, there is a general disclosure that alludes to the fact that there are outstanding lawsuits. But anything that is reasonably estimable in terms of likelihood as well as dollar amount, there is an estimate that is recorded and reflected within the financial statements. And that is something that the city provides to us, and then we audit it and determine that it is reasonable.
One that I don't see, but it might be that I'm just missing it in a footnote, so I can maybe stop by and catch that up later. And just the third piece, and maybe this was maybe one for city manager, just on the census data tracking, and I think in our earlier conversations you said sort of the new system will sort of maybe catch us up on this a little bit. Can you tell us about the new system and how this would fix the census data tracking?
We're currently in the process of implementing an enterprise-wide financial system that would incorporate both the HR functions, the finance functions, the utility billing functions that we have for the stormwater utility, and then as well it will include some of the community development software that we have. So we're kind of working through the replacement of all of those systems that will be integrated. The intent would be that the HR systems where we track and log hire dates and length of tenure in different positions would be integrated with the financial system so that it would tie out. I think this specific management letter comment, as I looked at it, was related to some of the hire dates and the police pension boards. I don't know if this is directly related to the financial system, and I'm looking to Adam or I'm looking to Director Scroggins to confirm that, or if this was related to the record keeping of the pension board. So I guess I just don't know based upon the finding. Yeah,
it would be more the records, the personnel files. Okay. I don't think that's maintained in the
So it's a paper
system.
copy issue. I'll have to track.
Again, for all of your work on this. I know some may not find this exciting reading, and I guess I do, because I think it actually gives us a very good position of where the city is financially, important information as we make decisions not only tonight but going forward in other areas. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jensen.
My question was just answered regarding the correction on the personnel records, so that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manager, has this information been put on the website yet?
Yes, the audit is on the website.
Okay. So just for the listening public, it's quite a bit of information, but we got the high level overview here tonight from CLA. But anybody that would like to dive into that is welcome to go to the website for more information. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Scroggins or Mr. Poley? Seeing none, I have a motion to receive and file by Councilman Ruckriegel, seconded by Councilmember Sear. Please cast your ballots. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
18-230 is a request to receive and file a presentation on the quarter ended June 30th, 2018 unaudited financial report.
Mr. Scroggins, did you want to make any mention on this one?
Sure. Presented with your council communication was the June 30th financial statements. Tonight we're going to cover those, and we also have a brief presentation kind of similar to what we did at the end of the first quarter for the second quarter. We'll say that at the end of the second quarter that our general fund balance shows an increase of about $3.5 million, so revenues over expenditures. But I will draw your attention that there's about $2.5 million that transfers that aren't booked at this point for debt service because they won't actually occur until later in the year. So the real surplus at this point in time is about $1 million. Our revenues are currently at approximately 97% of budget for the general fund, are about 5% higher than what they were at the end of June 2017. So, and that's a plus over our first quarter estimates. Expenditures, again, are coming in at about 91% of the budgeted expenditures at this point in time. Again, there's about $2 million worth of transfers that haven't occurred, so that will reduce the fund balances, increase to about $1 million. That covers the general fund on the quarterly financial report that I had put on your desk earlier. It's also up on the screen. That's where so at the end of June, the general fund net position is about $13.7 million. We're showing an increase in our special revenue funds too as well, debt service, and capital funds. So overall, our total increase in fund balance is about $14 million. I will say $4 million of that's related to bonds that were issued in January, so it's really about $10 million. Moving on to the next page, to revenues. These are where, again, we discussed in the first quarter. Now we'll get into where we're looking at for projected year-end numbers. Again, I said at the end of June, we're at about 97% on the general fund. The projection for 2018 is at 92.6, or just about $2.1 million short of what we budgeted for the year. I did see some increase in sales tax numbers, minimal. Like within 0.5% growth between April and March for the home rule sales tax. So these numbers have been adjusted for the information we have. We only have through April for sales tax, through May for income tax, and so those numbers are still being very conservatively calculated. As you can see, the special revenue funds, I'm projecting about 98% of revenues will be collected. Debt service will be transferred, so that those funds will be provided. Capital funds are coming in a little quicker than anticipated at this point, and a lot of that's related to grants. The trust and agency fund is the other post-employment fund, so we know what we're transferring to that. And the enterprise fund, I've included it at 100% because I really don't have any knowledge of where it's going to be since we just sent the first bills out. I do know that we did issue bonds for a portion of that $7 million, so I know that will come to fruition. I'm going to go to the next. This slide again recaps our sales tax. As you can see, sales tax based on this is the municipal sales tax received through April. It's projected to finish at about 21.7, right at budget. I think in March we were projecting it to come in a little short, but we've seen some positive results in those 2 months. The next one is the home rule sales tax. This one's still trailing, about projected to come in at 98%. These projections try to take into any lost revenues, any additional revenues. They also take in the reduction in the fee that the state was charging. They were charging us 2%, now they're going to charge us 1.5. So those are all factored into the projections. So those have increased over the first quarter as well. I think the last slide I have on income is income tax. But the next one. And this is projected to come in nearly at budget at this point in time. Prior to the completion of the first quarter, or after the completion of the first quarter, the state also approved a budget where they decreased the amount that they were withholding from 10% to 5%. So this realized an additional, I think it was $175,000 that we were projecting in the second half, which raised that revenue projection as well. Which brings us to expenditures. And currently, as I stated earlier, through June, we're at approximately 91% of budget. Again, that's not recording all the transfers at this point in time because we've met the debt service requirements for interest, but we will have large payments come December for principal. So the projections include all those transfers. Right now we're projecting that the expenditures will finish over budget by approximately $50,000. But the driving force there has been, well, 2 lawsuits that were approved tonight, increase in legal fees, but we've seen a reduction in holding the line in the other departments, so that's working in the right direction. I think the other funds were pretty much on target as what we projected in the first quarter. I think our special revenues decreased a little bit. I think the last one is, so this is the recap of the general fund. It shows our first quarter projections that we presented back in May. Our projected shortfall is about $664,000. In the second quarter projections, that shortfall has shrunk a little bit. We're down to about $605,000. So this has incorporated all the adjustments that are made to revenues and expenditures within those lines, including the reduction, the original projections in the first quarter. We had $1.5 million for overtime for fire that's been contained, so that's already taken into account for in the second quarter projections. So we're still looking at about a $600,000 shortfall to meet the $1.6 million fund balance increase that was included in the 2018 budget. And I guess all I have.
Questions for Director Scroggins? Councilmember Recreago.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of questions. On the second quarter projections, the $605,000 that we look at the budget shortfall, does that include our 2 agenda items today to settle 2 lawsuits?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so that is included in here. Okay. And if I heard you correctly, we're anticipating right now that we're probably $1 million in our general reserve fund. It is probably where we are at today, correct?
The unassigned fund balance. At the end of 2017, we were at 2.9. Currently, we're at about 5.9.
Okay.
So.
And as we're using our reserves here, where do we, can you walk us through what happens if we use all of our reserves, our unencumbered reserves, by the end of the year? Where do we go for more? Because I guess what concerns me is we have one of our strategic core pillars, which is a fiscally sound city. And we've used unencumbered reserves, which are really our savings for a rainy day, so that we don't have to do furloughs, so that we don't have to lay people off. And for now almost a decade, we've run those down to the point that we're getting pretty, what I'm going to say is the runway's short. It's getting a lot shorter. And if there were two lessons that I were taught very early on by my parents in business, one, you can't spend more than you take in, and two, you save for a rainy day. And I want to make for sure that we're leading with those lessons, because we have it as one of our pillars through a very extensive strategic process that we've got to be financially stable city, so that we can do the other things that fall in there, so that we can have a beautiful city, so that we can have a city that attracts businesses. And we're getting into some critical numbers, it would seem like, there. And that's just, I guess, my opinion. I want to ask for an answer on there. But where do we go if we use those unencumbered reserves? Because all the great projects that might come for us that would be good for the city, that might fall under there, or if we get one more additional lawsuit that we don't anticipate, could put us in a very precarious situation.
I agree. I mean, one option, with a lawsuit, if we had another large lawsuit that would wipe out our reserves, is that we would be able to establish a tort levy on the property taxes the next year, basically issue debt, get a loan to pay that off, and then issue when the property taxes came in, use those funds to pay back the loan that we had to borrow. That's in the case of a large lawsuit that we don't have any funds available for. I mean, in my mind, the only option that we have would be to borrow money if we run out of money.
And with our reserves, and are we at the same? Would we be at the same rate to be able to borrow that money as if we had followed our own policies, or maybe even halfway got to where our policies were as we go out to compete against other municipalities for money?
Right. It would impact our rate negatively.
I appreciate the information tonight. I guess it concerns me. The runway is short, and it keeps getting shorter for us. And I think it's important for the citizens of Peoria to know what the financial condition is that we're facing. And I know that we're all working very hard around the council to be able to right the ship. But I think that this is a community conversation that we need to make sure that everybody is fully aware of what situation we're facing at this point.
Right, and I think that's why we're really adamant about maintaining that $1.6 million increase in fund balance. So we need to start building that fund balance up. Originally our policy said we would do it in 5 years, but we know we're not going to be able to do it in 5 years. But we have to make that first step and show even the rating agencies and even our citizens that we're making this attempt to build up those funds again.
Thank you for your work on this. I know the numbers are what the numbers are, and sometimes it's not easy to bring these in front of us, but I appreciate all the work that you and your team do for us. Thanks.
Councilman Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question involves the sales tax projections. I'm glad to see that it's been a little more positive this second quarter. But based on your comments, I guess my question is whether you really expect that to continue in that fashion, based on the fact that several big stores have now since closed. This last month. Do you really think we'll have that trend continue? That our shortfall will be a little bit less than what you originally projected a couple months ago?
Well, as it relates to our home rule sales tax, that projection didn't really change very much from the first quarter to the second quarter. I think it was ultimately like $30,000 less than what it was in the first quarter. So I am still taking into account that we have a number of stores that have closed and the possibility of that lost revenue. The unknown is, are they going to go to a different store here located? Are they going to shop online, et cetera? So I've tried to be very conservative with my numbers. That's why I have the home rule sales tax coming in at approximately 98% at this point in time. As it relates to our municipal sales tax, that seems to be a little bit stronger and been a little more stable, which that would also include auto sales and things that license things that our home rule sales tax doesn't. But the biggest growth factor really within that sales tax is the local use, which that's where we get the small percentage on the internet purchases, but that one's growing faster than any other revenue we have at this point.
Okay, and just as a brief follow-up, a couple of meetings ago, when I think we first were having this discussion, I asked about, I think a couple of us did, about checking up on whether or not the city gets the sales tax when consumers purchase things online but pick them up in the store. And I don't know if we ever got a definite answer on that. I'd just like to know, because constituents ask, and it's an important part of the education piece that we're all involved in trying to get people to shop local and not online. So I'm wondering if you were able to confirm whether or not that sales tax is collected by the city.
I did confirm that. I think I emailed the council. The answer to that question is yes. When you purchase something online and pick it up at a local store, I can use Target, Best Buy, Walmart, you do pay the full retail tax on there. So we do get the home rule sales tax on there. And if you go in and you put your order in online and you change it to East Peoria where you're picking up, it will change the tax that you pay. Now, what I can't tell you is how the store reports it to the state. They don't break it out between credit cards and checks and cash, and they just report the total sales to the state. So the only assumption I have is they're being included in that total sales number.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councilmember Sear next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Scroggin, could you open your book, page 195 and 196, please? While you're doing this, I didn't realize that we didn't have a slide presentation of people that are in the audience tonight and also the constituent on TV. Can on page 95, 96, can you give us a brief history of what the numbers are for the government expenses the last 10 years? From 2008 to 2017, please. I'm just looking at the bottom line for expenses.
The net expense versus revenue is what you're looking at?
I'm looking for 2008. If I understand correctly, we had $167,000 of expenses, correct?
Correct.
2017, $197 million, correct?
Correct.
So our expenses went up about $30 million roughly over 10 years, correct?
That is correct.
So tell the story also. One of our biggest problem we have, talk about sales tax and all that, our biggest revenues, page 197, 198, tells the story to everybody, I think, about property taxes, state sales tax, state income tax, and home rule sales tax. Can you tell us what the numbers say to everybody that would look at those two pages?
Right. So in 2008, our local governmental taxes were about $131.8 million in total. In 2017, they're $138.7. So over that time period, we've seen about an increase of about $6 to $7 million in revenues versus a increase in expenditure and cost of nearly $30 million.
And this increase basically is because we raised EAV numbers for property taxes, but the rest of their taxes, sales taxes, have been flat for 10 years. Is that correct, roughly?
Yeah, even with the increase in sales tax.
So it is one of our biggest problems. As our expenses seem to go up every year, our revenue, especially from sales taxes, the top three anyway, have been flat for really 10 years, correct? Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Akison?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Director Scroggins, if you could just give us an overview of how the loan to the developer for the Pure Marquette has affected our budget, and what that loan amount was, $7.5 million, I think. Is that right?
It was $7 million.
7 on the nose. So could you just give us an overview of how that affects these numbers and what the plan is to recoup that amount of money to put in the post-employment benefit fund?
Right. That amount impacts, let me get it, page. Page 21, if you look at towards the bottom of the page, it talks about fund balance. And we have removed the loan receivable of the $7 million, and it has lowered the other post-employment benefit assigned amount by that $7 million. So it now reflects 23. It would have been closer to $30 million if the loan was collected.
Okay, so can we go without replacing that $7 million? Do we need to make some sort of effort to replace that I mean, once the hotel is sold at auction and we find out what the, how much if there is anything left after the hotel sells, if it sells, what do you have can you share with us what the plan is?
We continue to budget every year to put funds in the other post-employment benefit funds. So now it's just probably taking a little longer to get that to 100% than what it would have. We have done a lot to reduce that other post-employment liability. So percentage-wise, we're not as bad off as we were before. But yeah, the only way we're going to be able to reimburse it is over years. We're not going to be able to turn around and put $7 million in there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Councilman Euler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This may be a question for the manager because I don't see anyone here from Human Resources. But 2017 actual expenditures for employee benefits were $6.9 million, and we took it down to 5.5, and now we're back up to 6.5. What drove us to make the decision to take it down to now be $1 million over?
The employee benefits includes workman's comp, and our workman's comp is coming in higher here the first 6 months than we anticipated, because we thought, based on the previous year, we felt comfortable with what we had budgeted, but this year we've run into a number of workman's comp claims that are causing that projection to increase by year end.
These are actual payouts on claims that's driving
payouts and budget. Some projections on claims that could be coming forward.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Manager, do you have any comments on this? I mean, it might be a good time just to give us a timeline on when you're going to come back with a proposal to get us caught up on this.
So we are still in the process of discussing with the unions. We have some meetings scheduled in the next week or so with the unions. As this general fund summary slide shows, to get us back onto the fiscal plan that we had identified, we still need to find $600,000 in expense reductions in the general fund. This is based upon all of the changes that we've incorporated to date, all of the proposed spending cuts that have been made, but it has not included any of the personnel expenses that we had proposed or discussed with you previously. So that is still something that we need to continue to finalize, is working with our bargaining units, and then coming back to you with what that final plan would look like to get us back onto the spend. But it's still $600,000 is what we're looking at trying to make that adjustment on.
When do we expect that?
Hopefully we'll have something for you that we can explain certainly by the next meeting we would have that.
Thank you. Councilman Ruckriegel.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess just a kind of an answer to Councilwoman Jensen's question earlier. We do a lot of this in the restaurant business with online ordering and taxes. And because the order is actually part of the sales of that particular store and location, and that store is providing both the product and the inventory and the labor and all the accoutrements that way, and I believe this also follows with retail as well, the tax that is on the ticket and then collected is actually the local tax. That is then turned in for the receipts for that store as well. So buying online, whether that be either in the hospitality food industry or the retail, that does benefit if you do the pickup. So a very important question, which Councilwoman Jensen commented on, and it still does give you the ability to buy online, but have the convenience of making sure that your sales taxes stay local.
Good point. Any further questions for Director Scroggins or the manager? Seeing none, we have a motion to receive and file by Councilmember Sear and seconded by Councilmember Ruckriegel. Please cast your ballots. That motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
18-231 is a communication from the city manager with a request for the following: to adopt an ordinance amending the City of Peoria 2018-2019 biennial budget relating to the use of the Stormwater Utility Fund balance to purchase the Cemental property located at the foot of Spring Street in the amount of $159,000, and B is to approve the purchase of the property located at the foot of Spring Street.
Thank you. Councilwoman Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to defer this item for 45 days until the first meeting in September, please.
Okay. Seconded by Councilmember Turner. Councilwoman Moore.
I believe the Mr. City Manager, would that give you enough time to come back with some information for us?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on a deferral till September. See no lights. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
18-232 is a request to concur with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt an ordinance approving a special use in a Class R8 multifamily residential district for a rooming house, the Ronald McDonald House, for property located at 401 to 405 Northeast Monroe Avenue.
Thank you. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an item that let me first move for approval and then comment on the other side.
Okay, motion to approve, seconded by Councilman Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an item that I'm very excited about. After hearing our financial reports and talking about sales taxes going down and fearing that folks think we're closing up the house here, a house being Peoria. This is a project that's coming forward that is going to be built on property that is currently vacant. You may recall that unfortunately that house was lost, I believe, to a fire. And this is going to go up right next door to what is now the Scottish Rite Temple that is still there. It is a project that most people who are familiar with the Ronald McDonald houses understand them to be places where folks can go, and while their loved one, 99% of the time, I believe, it's children, are being cared for in the hospital. If you've ever had a child that is sick, or a family member with a child that is sick, you understand how frustrating and devastating they can be. Frustrating because as much as you would want to make that child better, you can't do it by yourself. And if you have to leave your home to go to a place where specialty services are provided that we can offer here in Peoria, Having some place that you can go and live for a period of time while your child is receiving care is near and dear to all of our hearts. But having said that, this is a project on its own merit. It's going to bring vitality to that area. As you saw here recently, Obed and Isaac opened across the street. There are things that are happening on that block. This is a block that leads right to OSF and Methodist, two of the premier hospitals in Illinois. And with that, I'd like for you to approve this item to go forward to be built. I can't wait for it to get completed. I'm so excited about it. I had an open house for them at the Gateway building. And so with that, I'd like to ask for your support.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion on this item? We have a motion and a second. I think it may go without saying, but I will just add my compliments to Councilman Moore for helping this project along. Also, my compliments to all the people in the community who have really done a lot of work to get this project funded and on its way. And we all know what Ronald McDonald Houses mean to communities and especially to families that need their services. So thank you very much. Peoria is very, very excited to have this project coming forward. Thank you very much. Councilman Graham.
Well, I think we should all be very excited about this project. And, you know, we deal with some of these very almost Malthusian projection numbers as it relates to our budget, potential shortfall, et cetera. But there are some great things happening, and the future for Peoria is hiding in plain sight. And this project is one more projection of this city's movement in the direction of medical community expansion and growth. It's become our #1 employer. It's a fantastic project in the medical district, what's becoming the medical district downtown, which certainly affects District 1 and 2 and the whole city, with it being our #1 employer. So this is a wonderful project, and I think the future of Peoria is bright. We do have some hurdles to get over, and we will. It's not the first time we've had Malthusian numbers, but every project we have like this moves us farther down the road toward diversifying our economy and continuing to grow the professional, technical sector of our economy. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. I do think that my eyes are going, but if I'm not mistaken, I see Terry Clark sitting there in the back. And Terry, thank you and to all your McDonald's stores and everything that you've done and your leadership to get this here as well. We appreciate that very much. And note to the clerk that Councilman Graham used the word Malthusian tonight that I don't think we've heard before, so we'll need a definition of that before the next meeting. Malthusian. We have a motion and a second. Seeing no further discussion, please cast your ballots. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk.
18-233 is a request to concur with the recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt an ordinance approving a special use in a Class WM West Main Form District for a mixed-use development with waivers for property located at 839 West Main Street, more specifically including addresses 839 West Main, 1013 and 1029 Orange Street, 834 and 838, 842 Russell Street, 1010, 1012, 1016, 1018, and 1022 Garfield Avenue.
Yeah, thank you. Councilman Graham.
Mr. Chairman, what we're bringing forward tonight is the antithesis of Thomas R. Malthus's projections. And former economics teacher Thomas R. Malthus made all kinds of projections about the doubling of human population, outstripping the resources to support that population, leading to inevitable hunger and death. And of course, I do not believe we're going in that direction in Peoria. And our problems are high class compared to what Thomas Malthus predicted. So Economics has gotten the nickname the dismal science for that reason. Thomas Malthus was one of the first economic philosophers, and when I taught at Peoria High School, I loved not teaching Thomas Malthus, but some of the other philosophers and their vision for the future, like Adam Smith. He very much animates the way we operate in our city and in our country, believing very much in free enterprise. And tonight we have Tim Roth from the Vecino Group in Springfield, Missouri. He is here in the audience. At an appropriate time, I will ask him to make a few comments. This is the invisible hand of Adam Smith, another economic philosopher. This is a company that believes in Peoria. They looked very closely at Peoria and our markets, and they saw a need for their project here. And we have been talking, staff and I have been talking to Tim Roth and representatives of the Vecino Group, my gosh, since last December almost, and he's made multiple trips to our city. We've run past this particular project, run it past our neighborhood groups on a number of occasions, and we've gotten input from them. That basically what this amounts to is a student housing project with the primary target being the college population as well as the medical student population, although it's open to all. And this would be a huge win, I think, for West Main Street. Would blend in beautifully with the Ronald McDonald House, the OSF headquarters that will soon be coming online, in the Chase Bank building. I know we're all happy that the historic tax credits are there to help make that happen. This is a corridor of vibrancy. And I certainly want to thank Kim Smith, the planner who's here tonight. Kim, could you please stand up for all the work she's done on this with Director Black, sometimes referred to as Justice Black because he helps interpret many of our codes and keeps us out of trouble as much as possible. And Tim Roth, could you please stand up? Thank you for coming again tonight. And once this comes to pass, and we're all hoping it will, we will have, as Ross Black said a few days ago to me, about 300 people living, studying, working on West Main Street in a new development, which will probably create even more spin-off development using the invisible hand of Adam Smith, because there are other properties up there available and for sale. And every time we do something like this, it certainly will help, I believe, our number 4 employer, which is Bradley, give that particular target population, Bradley students, more options with upscale housing. Every time we do things to help our number 1 and number 4 employer, we are moving this economy down the road. We do not need to be here hand-wringing night after night after night because we are growing the economy. We have people interested in doing cool things in the city of Peoria. And so I see our future hiding in plain sight. I see great things happening. And Mr. Roth, I want to thank you for your interest, your company's interest in the city of Peoria. And I hope that the project will come to fruition as it's outlined. With that, I would move for approval.
Okay, motion to approve, seconded by Councilmember Ruckriegel. Is there discussion on this item? Councilman Ruckriegel.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think it should go not unseen that Councilman Greb has really put in a lot of time and leadership on this project, making this happen, and really meeting with the neighbors and interested parties. And so I know that there were a lot of thank yous and introductions there, but we definitely don't want to forget the work that Councilman Greb has put in, not just in the past couple of weeks, but really for months on making this project come to fruition. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Akeson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a couple of questions for the developer, if possible. So maybe...
you could come up to that microphone right there. I warned him that he may have some questions.
And we've spoken, it was terrific. I want to applaud this developer for tucking the parking inside the building and have it wrap around. That's perhaps that's a first for our city, so I think that that should be noted, and I applaud you for that. I do want to address an issue that has been brought to my attention, and I thought it would be helpful for you to address it, and that has to do with the Core 10 material that has been suggested for the exterior. And the person that brought this to my attention sent me a PDF from the U.S. Steel website, which produces Core 10, and they recommend Core 10 AZP to be used rather than Core 10 as a siding material. And the reason is that it has a tendency to deteriorate if confronted with snow, ice, sand, dirt, etc. And so with this material coming to the grade level, are we misunderstanding that it's going to be just plain Core 10, or is it going to be Core 10 AZP?
It will be just plain Core 10, and Core 10 is designed to somewhat rust, if you call it rust on the outside. That's patina, or that's the protective coating that it has that protects it from deteriorating any further. If you have seen, at least in our market, I'm not sure if you have a Chipotle here, but some of the signs that they have out there on the sign, that's Core 10. You'll see some telephone poles that are Core 10. They just rust, and they just stay that rust color. And so the AZP is a painted type tin, and it has a character that is just paint, and so when you see our Core 10, which the product we're using is the same thickness, same metal grade, same gauge as what you're mentioning, but it will patina at a level that has character to it, I guess. And so it does look like rust. It does look like our intent with the project was to build a project that is new, but doesn't necessarily look like you just plopped a brand new building in an older neighborhood. And so it has some character to it, and so that's the reason for the Core 10.
Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate that, and I think that it's great that it's a little edgy, especially in a university area. But just again, to reiterate, just so that I understand completely, U.S. Steel recommends not using it in this application, and yet you're confident that we're not going to see any deterioration quickly, because we've had some experience with that in our city where a structure has failed, and then I know that this will be private property, but then we want it to look as good as it possibly can, and I'm sure you don't want it to deteriorate. So just for the record, you're totally confident in this application, even though U.S. Steel recommends against it?
Totally confident. We've used it in another residential application, and as I mentioned, just I guess for the record, that from a residential standpoint, they do require a thermal barrier behind it as well as a rain screen behind it for protection behind the product. And so, yes, totally confident because we've used it currently in an existing multifamily.
Oh, okay, thank you. And again, I really want to commend you for disguising the parking. I think that is fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion or questions on this item? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your ballots. The motion is approved unanimously. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
18-234 is a request to receive and file a presentation regarding the City of Peoria Don't Shoot initiative.
Welcome, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Is it on? Okay, yes. There it goes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Before I get started with the presentation, I kind of wanted to just explain a little bit more in detail with the focused deterrence strategy. The name Don't Shoot Initiative is actually focused deterrence strategy with what we use as a strategy to address the gun violence here in Peoria. With focused deterrence, we focus on the 1% of the population that's driving the violence. So officers, they identify the individuals that are driving the violence, and then we focus on them. There are several different pieces to the focused deterrence strategy. First piece is the enforcement part. That's where once the individuals are identified, law enforcement will focus their attention on those individuals and attempt to get them to stop the violence. The second piece is call-ins. So that's where individuals are identified as being the most at risk to be the victim of gun violence or to cause gun violence. When they're identified, we have what is called a call-in, and I encourage council, if you have not been to one, to please come to our next one. We don't have that date set yet, but we're looking, trying to get sometime in August. But the call-in candidates at that point will hear a message from a panel of speakers. The first part of it will be law enforcement telling them to stop the violence, and then they'll have prosecutors telling them what will happen if they don't stop, and then they'll have the voice of pain, which is someone that has been the victim of gun violence. They'll have a voice of redemption, which is someone that has changed their life around. They'll have a voice of faith, and then they'll have the voice from the community service coordinator. Next portion of that is the services that they will be provided. A few call-ins ago, we started providing services at the call-in. So we'll have individuals from different businesses and reentry services actually at the call-in. So as soon as the candidates get done at the call-in, they're able to start receiving those services immediately. Another portion of the services is what Mr. Angel Cruz does, and I have asked him to come here with me tonight, and he'll be able to take questions and stuff at the end of the presentation. And then we also have the community services portion. That's where a lot of the work that Officer Daniel Duncan does. He's our community services officer. I'd also ask him to come here tonight if you had any questions for him as well. So go ahead and get started with the presentation now. Goes. Okay, the first slide is pretty self-explanatory, and it is available every month. It gets updated by our crime analyst, and it's available to the public on the City of Peoria website. And so just for the listening audience that cannot see this, I'll go through the different stats that are presented here just to give everyone an idea of what's on here. This is also a fluid data sheet, meaning it could change weekly or daily depending on what goes on in the City of Peoria. So I wanted to pick a date that was a date that I could go by as a goal date per se. So for example, I use through the end of June, which is the end of the second quarter. I figured that made the most sense to be able to have a date that I could say, okay, this is where we are at the end of the second quarter. So at the end of June, we had 8 homicides by gunfire compared to 5 in 2017. We had 30 shooting incidents compared to 32 last year. And even though we were down by 2 shooting incidents, we were up by 4 shooting victims. So we had 36 victims this year compared to 32 last year. For gunshot victims, that's a 13% increase. We have seized, at the end of June, 129 guns off the streets. And then next one is citizen calls for shots fired. We are at 272 compared to 286 last year. And as you could see, 272 is the lowest number since we started tracking in 2006. Now, shot spotter alerts, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 covers the South End and West Bluff. We have 159 alerts compared to 97 last year, so that is a significant increase. And then in phase 2, we're at 140 compared to 91. Now, phase 2, the coverage area is the North Valley through Averyville, the Center Bluff, and East Bluff. Now, where we received shots fired calls from citizens as well as receiving a shot spotter alert, we're at almost 25%. It's 24.9%. I believe the national average is right around 22% of the calls, 20 or 22% of the calls that we would receive from citizens compared to what shot spotter will pick up.
Chief, we have a question here. Councilwoman Eggleston.
Chief, just for clarification, are these when you said you wanted this to be through the end of June, so are we looking at 6 months worth of numbers? These are not, is it June to June? Because then, obviously in 2018 we haven't completed the next 6 months, so.
No, it's January 1st through June 30th.
So this is just 6 months for 2006, 2007, 2008 onward, 6 months worth of numbers.
Yes. So the next slide just covers the shootings again. Like I'd mentioned before, we're at 30 shooting incidents, which was down by 2, but we had 4 more victims compared to 2017 at 36, and then 8 homicides that were caused by gunfire compared to 5 the year before. Wanted to give a breakdown of the shooting victims, just to give everyone an idea of the people being impacted by the gun violence. So out of the 36 shooting victims, 33 of them were male, 33 were African American, and the ages, the most prominent age was the 18 to 23 range, where there were 15, but if you expand that and go from 18 to 35, 28 of the victims were between that age, which is 80%. Talking about the shooting incidents. So one of the tools, as you're aware of, that we have is ShotSpotter, but I'll give a brief explanation of what ShotSpotter is. ShotSpotter is a gunfire detection system that uses sensors to triangulate the location of gunfire. So with the ShotSpotter that is in place, out of those 30 incidents, 18 of the incidents were captured by ShotSpotter, and so officers got immediate notification that a shooting had occurred, and so that gives us an opportunity to be on scene a lot quicker. And as far as our homicides, 4 of them were captured by the ShotSpotter. One of the things you may ask, okay, why doesn't it capture all of them? So again, like I said, it's captured by sensors and it has to be triangulated. So if a shooting occurs inside of a residence or inside of a car, that's not going to activate the sensors. And it also has to be triangulated. So if only 1 or 2 of the sensors pick up the shots fired, it's not going to be able to triangulate that location. One of the things that we can do if we believe that the shooting had occurred within the ShotSpotter coverage area, we would contact ShotSpotter, and then they would have an individual specifically review that incident, and they would look for an alert or pickup of 1 or 2 of the sensors, and then we would pick up that information from there. The total number of ShotSpotter alerts that we've had is 372. Now, if you go back and do the math on the front page and you notice the alerts that happen in Phase 1 and Phase 2, it adds up to 299. So the reason that it says 372 here is because it includes the duplicate alerts where you may get an echo, and so it may activate another alert. However, it's the same incident. Or the police range in the fall and spring when the leaves aren't on the trees, the police range will activate the alerts and put it like in a location off of Martin Luther King Drive. So the officers will respond and then obviously tell that's the firing range. And then also the citizen calls for shots fired are deducted from this as well. Now, I mentioned before that ShotSpotter is a tool for the officers. So out of those alerts, we've been able to recover 26 weapons since January 1st. Without that tool, those are 26 more guns that could possibly be on the street. Out of the 26 guns that were recovered, 10 individuals were arrested. 21 individuals were interviewed. That does not mean that that a gun was recovered and the person was interviewed. The 21 could be in addition to the 10 that were arrested, because you may respond to the scene and you don't find anything, but there's still people standing around, so you would interview them. And then 42 of the incidents, there was damage to property. One of the things that I wanted to bring to attention to the council as well is the number of guns that are seized. So far this year, we're at the end of June, we had 129 illegal weapons seized. The way those are seized is through search warrants, proactive police work done by the officers. They may do a traffic stop and recover a gun on someone, or if we get citizens' calls and about someone having a gun. So I just wanted to reflect that to the good police work that is being done by the officers and the proactive work, because a lot of this is done proactively by the officers. And you can tell by the numbers, we are lower than last year, and it's probably about average. If you take the average between 2011 to 2018, it's pretty close to the average. There were a couple lower years, but then a couple of higher years. As I mentioned before, there's another component called the call-ins. And what that means, there are two different types of call-ins. One is a group or gang call-in, and the criteria for that is the person has to be 18 years or older, they have to be on parole or probation, and they have to have some affiliation to a gang or group. Those are individuals that we have identified as being the most at risk. Like I said before, they're the most at risk of being shot or being the suspect of a shooting. Then we also have the most violent offender call-in. Criteria for that, the person has to be 18 years or older, on parole or probation, and they have to have a gun arrest or violent crime arrest in the last 5 years. So since we started the initiative or focused deterrence strategy, in the first call-in was December of 2012. Since that date, we've had 18 total call-ins. 15 of them have been group call-ins, and the 3 have been most violent offender call-ins. Out of those call-ins, we've reached 278 individuals, and the most recent one that we had was April 12th of this year. And like I said before, we are in the process of scheduling our next one. Just wanted to go over the breakdown of what it looked like as far as the results from the last call-in. There were 13 total call-in candidates there. Out of those 13, 7 of them received services. So with having the services available to them immediately right after the call-in, we're seeing a better percentage of the individuals receiving the services. Out of those 7, 5 of them continued to follow through with services, and 4 of them currently have a job, or at the time that this document was made, 4 of them had a job. Out of those 7 that received services, there were 23 different services received, and I'll touch on that a little bit later, and then Mr. Cruz will also go into detail of what type of services that will be provided. So the question always comes up is, okay, is this really working? Do you think that it's effective? So I wanted to do a breakdown of the individuals that have been rearrested. So if you look at that, out of the 278 individuals that have attended a call-in, 98 have not been rearrested and 165 have. So then I get asked, okay, if they are rearrested, what are they rearrested for? Our intention is to get them to stop the violence and put guns down. Out of those 180 that had been rearrested, 37 of them have been arrested for a gun, so 20%. 32 of them have been arrested for violent crimes, which include battery, robbery, home invasion, and one of them had been arrested for homicide. Then we had 111 of them, or 62%, that was rearrested for other crimes, which would include misdemeanor, traffic charges, drug arrest, those type of crimes. So then, taking a look at what type of services and stuff that are provided, out of the 278 calling candidates, 146 of them received some type of assistance. Out of those 146, 612 different types of services were provided. Some of the different types of services that Mr. Cruz helps them attend are the skills trades training, housing and bill assistance, job training or assistance, transportation, and something that I think, like for us, and I'll self-admit that, you know, one of the things you take for granted is IDs. One of the big things that the individuals that we come across, they don't have IDs. You can't succeed or get through life very easily without having a simple ID card. So that's one of the things that we focus on as well. And then we also look at the education piece, where we have GED training and classes for that as well. So as far as my portion of it, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Cruz, and he can explain some of the stuff that he does, and then before we take questions. So, Mr. Cruz.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. So basically what we're seeing here is my role in how this all comes together. And I think if I can that the word that sticks out is consistency. Is being consistency to these individuals that are coming to our call-ins, and not only saying this is what we offer, but taking action behind that. Transportation is a big issue because a lot of these men don't have transportations to get to the places where they're referred to get the type of services that they need for that support for lifestyle change. Basically is this whole issue with this identification is finding the proper documentations, because some of them don't even have it, but to get that documentation and then go forth. So once they get that ID, which is a huge motivating factor for these men, because once they get that, now they can honestly probably say, what can I do next? And just going forward and not only referring, because you can refer someone, but 99.9%, they're probably not going to get there, because the minute they're given any signs of rejection, they'll get discouraged. But walking them through this process so that we can start seeing the changes, whether it's employment or housing or rental assistance or bill assistance or education, is to have that consistency to go forward with these individuals until they know that they're ready to stand on their own and move forward. I had a client when I first started, went through this whole process, has his own apartment, has a job, got his kids back, but he was willing to accept the help. And not only that, but believe in somebody who can stand by him in this process to see these successes take place. So I think it's just being consistent to not only show them visually the type of services, but to even have those services there so that right when that calling is done, they can go and they start signing up for these services. But not only that, everybody can sign up for something, but it doesn't mean they're going to attend it. But to do that follow-up and say, hey, you know, you signed up for housing or you signed up for GED, you know, I'm here for assistance. If you can't get there, I'll get there, you know, get you there. But the goal of that is to see that now they're standing on their own because there was somebody who was consistent. It's not only we're not only showing you what's on this presentation, but we're going to walk with you through this process so that we can see success and we can see lifestyle changes.
Thank you, Angel. Like I said before, I'd also ask Officer Duncan to come, and he's going to just briefly talk about some of the community work that we do. One of the things when we first initiated the Don't Shoot initiative and focused deterrent strategy, a lot of the accusations that were out there was that it was an incarceration program. that's why I thought it was important to bring Mr. Cruz and Officer Duncan here to be able to explain that that's not what it is. That's not our focus. Our focus is to stop the violence and to focus on the 1% of the population that's driving the violence. So I'll hand it over to Officer Duncan.
Good evening. I feel special being able to come to a council meeting and speak. But I appreciate you guys allowing us to be able to say something. There's many assets that we're actually doing through community service, through the police department, that the chief allows us to do. Myself and Angel Cruz, as well as Officer Watkins, Amy Dotson, doing things together. But I would say two of the best components that we're doing would be our Explorers program, I know a lot of individuals know about, as well as a new program that we're working with Jobs Partnership in the county jail. And I believe it's groundbreaking, and it's called Breaking Boundaries. And it's one that you probably won't find nowhere in the United States. They do participate in something like it in England, but it's actually taking local police officers and going into the county jail and starting to build a relationship with inmates that are in the jail and teaching them one of the best things in life, and that's fatherhood. For they can try to break the cycles of some of their parenting at home. So that's a program that we actually got going right now through Jobs Partnership. I'm really excited about it. I think it's one of the best things that this city actually can do in terms of fixing this relationship with those in the community that actually are on the other side of the law.
Thank you, Officer Duncan. So for our end of it, that concludes our presentation, so we'd be open for any questions.
Chief, I think maybe one of the things we missed on this presentation, and I don't know which one of you three might want to address it, is some discussion on PCAV. I mean, PCAV is probably the most important component to, to the initiative and how the community plays into that. Maybe one of you guys could give us an update on the status of PCAV.
Sure. So I can start off, and then if you guys have anything to add to it. So PCAV, or Peoria Community Against Violence, that, like the mayor said, is an important piece in our community. All of us that live and work in the community are part of the community. So we stress anyone and everyone to get involved in Peoria Community Against Violence, because that's what they address. There's several new components that they are looking at. There's some change here recently, and they're focusing on a couple of different things, and I'll turn it over to Officer Duncan to let him go into a little bit further detail on that. He attends all the meetings and stuff with PCAV, but especially for the listening audience, I can't stress enough the importance of getting involved in the Peoria Community Against Violence and help make a change with that.
Yes, one of the areas I believe that they was actually meeting today to discuss is just developing a crisis intervention team. This intervention team will go out if there has been a serious shooting, act of violence, and where that they would have different components that would actually be able to be there to assist, from social, emotional, as well as Crime Stoppers, and just being a support to the individuals and the families that is there, having pastors there. What we're seeing a lot in the time that we have actually been doing this component of it is that when there's an individual that actually has lost their life, there's almost no direction what to do, no life insurance, nowhere even know where to have a funeral at. So to have all those social agencies be able to be there as well to help and to give direction to it, it's just one of the major components that we've been sitting down and talking, myself and Angel Cruz and other PCAV members actually today about it. So I think that's where the area where they're going to try to focus more of their attention right now in that area there. But they definitely need assistance. They definitely need help. I believe that Mr. Mayor and Officer Watkins has always said it. Everybody is a PCAV member. Everybody is against violence in the city, and we have to come together and be able to pull our resources together through one organization in terms of this, when it comes to the acts of violence, to be able to help change some things in the city.
The good thing about coming together with this crisis intervention team is going to establish relationships with the community so that barriers can be broken, so that we see a unity among the city in general, as well as other agencies, that we want to really help those that are in need. People are hungry, but they just don't know where to eat at, and we want to be able to come with the nourishment that they need, so that hope, and we can see change. And it's gonna take a community effort. And I think it's true. Everyone in the city of Peoria is PCAF. If we're against violence, then we stand up for it. And we reach out to those who are in need to see that there's hope whenever there's a situation.
So the PCAV is an important component of this. Your report is basically, we're getting statistics from the police department. PCAV is not the police department. PCAV is Peoria Community. So if there's people that are listening that want to get involved with PCAV, want to learn more about it, what would be the best way for them to come in contact with people to learn more about PCAV or how they can participate?
One would be several of the actual members that they have from Ms. Gloria, Chris Duncan, my father, is part of it as well, Bobby Ford, and they actually have a number in there today. I believe they're redoing their social media as well today, and to be able to have those avenues to where you can see where the need is. But as you said, it's totally separate from the police department. My role actually in it would be no different than another member's role or somebody in the community that wants to participate and wants to help, and that's exactly what my function of it is just being somebody in the community that's against violence, born and raised here in Peoria, and want to do my part as well to help.
So I guess to my question is there a place, and I'm asking because I don't know, do we have something on our website that would be to connect them with PCAV, or what would be the best way for people that are listening?
Right now it'll be via social media, but the website is being updated where all that information could be provided for those who want to show an interest as well as volunteer for PCAF.
So in the meantime, our communications director is here, so we'll make a note and figure out how to put a link on our website to get to them, just so that for people that want to get involved with that, we want it to be easy. So we'll try to help on that side too.
Thank you.
Yeah. Councilman Regenbach, you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a perfect segue. I was going to mention this under new business, but this Thursday, PCAV is hosting their P-Town Soup, they call it. And for anybody that hasn't gone to this, I strongly encourage you to check it out. It's really a low-key event. Some of our local chefs will be preparing the dinner for it. And then there'll be 2 or 3 nonprofits that are working against violence that will make a brief presentation. And it's really a very powerful evening because these are organizations that you might not even know the name of, but they're really the grassroots organizations that are helping in the neighborhoods, on the blocks where this kind of violence has been taking place. And after the presentation, if you want to vote for who the winner is, you make a $5 donation, and you can vote as many times as you have $5 bills. And then that organization will get a percentage of the proceeds from the evening. So this is a really great grassroots effort and a great way that PCAV is reaching out to help the folks in the neighborhood as well as those that are trying to make the difference.
Thank you.
Oh, it's this Thursday. It'll be at the First Baptist Church on Lake Street at 6 o'clock. So First Baptist Church on Lake Street at 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was also going to mention this under new business, but this seems like a good segue to announce that this coming Saturday at Martin Luther King Jr. Park on MacArthur Highway from noon until 2 p.m., there will be a Stop the Violence Peace Rally. That's this coming Saturday from noon to 2 p.m. in Martin Luther King Jr. Park on MacArthur Highway. The Stop the Violence Peace Rally, that's being brought to you by the Street Outreach Workers and PCCEO. So basically this is an organization that is grassroots. Some of the people who are connected to a lot of folks who are on these statistics have decided that enough is enough, and the community is rising up to get engaged in addition to PCAF, and I do support PCAF and would hope that everyone gets involved to the degree they can, but also these other initiatives that are happening from the street level. Come out and support the folks who are trying to stem the violence right in the community. There will be free food that oftentimes get folks out and some refreshments. Thank you.
Thank you. I think to Mr. Cruz's, and I think Officer Duncan made the same comment, that these street-level groups that are taking initiatives like this may or may not consider themselves part of PCAV, but they are part of a Peoria community against violence, and that's what we're really looking for here, and that's a lot of credit to them. Councilman Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chief. You're one of the few I can actually see over the podium because you're so tall, so I appreciate that. Thank you for putting this together. I appreciate it. I think I was the person who requested. I think it's helpful, even though a lot of this information is on our website, to talk about this, what the stats are and how the program's going at a council meeting. The one thing I do note, I think Councilwoman Akeson may agree with me, it might be helpful if we could get statistics for a whole year and compare them. I know we're only halfway through the year. Maybe as a supplemental report, we could look at, I don't know, each year and then through this year for the first 6 months, since we decided to do the report now. It's just sort of hard to see how the program's really working if we only have, a snapshot of 6 months. So that's just one request. I don't know if that would be, is that doable? Do you understand my question?
So you would want all of 2017 compared to the previous years then?
Yeah. Unless, I don't know if you can do it from, if it's easier to do July 1st through June 30th every year. I don't know, how the system works and what's the easiest way to put that in.
Usually the easiest way is to go from January 1st until the date that you're doing, and then, the previous year would be, January through December. That would be the easiest way to do it.
Okay. So that's one request I have. And then I have a couple questions. These aren't page numbers. On the part where you have the shot spotter statistics, it's about halfway through the report, where you have shot spotter alerts where a gun was recovered, and it's 26. I think I'm wondering, too, if we could get information, or if if it's easy to put together how many shot spotter alerts resulted in an arrest. I know you have, 10. Like a gun was seized.
Line below it is 10.
But isn't that's only where a gun is seized? I guess my question is, could there be a different number when we get a shot spotter alert and it results in an arrest, not necessarily a gun being seized, but aren't there sometimes cases in which there's an arrest made, but a gun is not seized?
There may be an incident where officers arrive on scene and talk to the individuals there, and someone has a warrant, and that would be an arrest, but it wouldn't be related to the shots fired per se.
Okay, I just think that might be helpful information to have, to know how many times it also resulted in an arrest, not necessarily connected to a gun, but I just think that would be helpful information, as well as knowing, in addition to the 4 that you have here, the gun was seized from an arrestee. How many individuals were actually charged with a crime as a result of a shot spotter alert, if that's possible?
I'll talk to our crime analyst and see if it's possible.
And then I have, is this information, the general information that's on the website, which I think is the first page of the report, did you say it's updated monthly?
Yes, at the end of every month.
Okay. But again, this is, I appreciate this information, and I thank you and the person in charge of the data, who I know it took her some time to put all this together. Another question that I have, I don't know what slide it is, where you have the don't shoot call-ins, and I think it's sort of a total of the call-ins for the entire program since the program's been in place, and you have 278 total call-in candidates. Is that the number of individuals that qualify as call-in, or is that the same number as the number that attended the call-ins?
All of those are, that's the number that actually attended.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Okay. And then do you have a number of how many would qualify or were, given notices to come to the call-ins, and how many actually attended?
Yes, I have. I would have to look it up, but we'd be able to find out how many people were invited or served the notice to be there. Then out of that number, 278 showed up.
Okay, because I think that would be helpful to just know how many are actually showing up. And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Councilman Nicholson, did you have a... Okay.
No, I'm going to address it at another time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Gribb?
Well, what comes through to me when I look at these numbers and hear our experts talking about the problem we have in our city is we have an enormous amount of work that we still need to do with our young people, and especially our young men. There is an enormous amount of work being done by our schools right now, our churches, our pastors, our family members, but it's obviously not matching the challenge. And that's why we have some of these very, very dismal numbers this year in spite of all of our efforts. I think we're on the right track, however. And I think that this council and previous councils' support of the resident officer program, in addition to your program, Mr. Cruz, of course, does a lot to engage our young people to interrupt the cycle of violence. I know one of the resident officers for District 2, and I certainly believe the other district officers, resident officers, are doing the same thing. They're engaging our young people early on and trying to preempt the violence, provide constructive outlets for children. I know Adrian Aguilar, who is one of the resident officers for District 2, recently won an award for being the pillar of the West Bluff, and he right now is busily involved with some of our other police officers and working with kids. And we have to support our schools, too, as they work closely with kids to keep them in school, conforming to reasonable rules and regulations. We've got to be sure kids are in when they should be. Curfews are being enforced. And I think we can bring these numbers down. It is amazing. We talk about a homicide in this community. If we just, let's say we didn't care about the people involved, and of course we do, the enormous expense to this community for just one homicide and adjudicating and maybe sending somebody away, part of the Department of Corrections, it's enormous, which says once again that we need to invest more money on the front end with our schools and our families and our doing what we can as a police department to engage our kids. That's the real solution. We're not going to police our way out of this. And, when I go to bed at night, I don't know what's going to be on the significant events report the next day. We can't always predict with certainty where somebody's going to have a beef with somebody else or whether there's a business transaction that's gone haywire. But these numbers can change. They can be bent down. I remember, I think the first year I ran for office, there were 26 homicides in the city of Peoria that year alone. And through these years that I've been here, we've seen this up and down, and we just need to keep it down. We need a sustained period where we can keep these numbers down and keep kids from involving themselves in totally counterproductive activities. I think the call-in program is good for our schools. Mayor, it's similar to the counseling that we do every day in our schools to try to get the attention of kids who are going down the wrong path. But the name of the program is Don't Shoot. Well, without this program, we can only contemplate what the numbers might be. So it's the best thing we have going now. We're always receptive and open to new programming that might help. But one thing's clear. Our families and our schools are the first line of defense. So we have to continue to work with our schools, certainly, and assist our family members as best we can as a community, working together, partnering. Thank you, Chief, for bringing this information forward, and thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Cruz, for your hard work and the resident officer program, too. Mr. Duncan, good to see you. I remember when somebody looked just like you sat next to me a few years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. You know, one of the things that I think we all realize is there's not an easy answer to this. What we have utilized over a number of years is both human strength in the officers that are on the street to do this, but we're also combining that with technology like ShotSpotter. We've also been able to utilize the NIBIN technology through a grant from Senator Durbin helped us get that, and that's really been another tool that's been very important for our police department and being able to identify bullets that have been used in different crimes and matching them to the same gun. So technology definitely has to be a big part of this. I really, you know, one of the things when we first started getting statistics from ShotSpotter is, you know, these numbers were so high, but we didn't have anything to balance it against before we had ShotSpotter. So one of my questions, and I guess it'd just be speculation on, you know, seeing a reduction in some of the ShotSpotter numbers. Is that because, you know, people aren't, I mean, the ShotSpotter numbers are down, but the people calling in are not corroborating that. So are people just getting used to certain areas having them, or?
Yeah, I think, and again, it would be speculation on my part as well, Mr. Mayor, but you know, individuals that live in the area, do they know that ShotSpotter's there and that the police are going to respond so they don't have to call and get involved? Or do they become desensitized to it and they get used to it and so they don't call? I don't have a definite answer for that.
We mentioned a couple dates here that there are going to be some community activities, and I would like to note that there will be a community walk on Tuesday, August 6th. This is Bobby Ford's group that will be meeting at the East Bluff Community Center from 5 to 6:30 on Tuesday, August the 7th at 5 o'clock. So that's another one that's out there. And there was a mention made about the Moonlight Basketball League, and it was just they wanted to make sure everybody knows it's Moonlight Basketball and not a different name from a different community. So Moonlight Basketball is the one that is happening down at the Riverplex. Are there any further comments or questions for the chief? We appreciate you coming in tonight and give us this information. A lot of good work going on out in the community, and we just need to keep it up, get more people involved with PCAV. I'm not seeing any more questions, and we have a motion to receive and file by Councilmember Euler, seconded by Councilmember Graham. Please cast your ballots. The motion passes unanimously, and thanks again for the presentation. Madam Clerk.
We're at unfinished business 18-076 is a request to amend a decision of the Historic Preservation Commission regarding a requested height waiver for a wall in the rear yard of property located at 1808 West Moss Avenue.
Councilman Graham.
Mr. Chairman, I move to amend.
Okay, motion to approve the amendment, seconded by Councilman Riggenbach. Discussion on this item. Seeing none, please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
18-185 is a communication from the City Manager and Corporation Council with a request to receive and file the status of an agreement with the CEO Council.
Mr. Manager.
At this point in time, we have no agreement yet. I think that there was some correspondence that was sent from the CEO Council that they will have something for our meeting on August 14th.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion to receive and file this communication by Councilman Euler, seconded by Councilman Regenbach. Please cast your ballots. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
If there's no further unfinished business.
Anything unfinished tonight? Unfinished? Okay. Madam Clerk.
New business.
New business come before the council. New business. Council Member Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got just a couple of announcements. On tomorrow, the 25th, on Wednesday, at 6 p.m. at the Carver Center, I'm holding a meeting to talk about the upcoming auction. As many of you know, the county has an auction about once a year, I guess. This year it's on August the 7th. And if you saw the book, it's about this thick. And probably 80 to 90% of the properties that are in that book are located in the 1st District, and probably 90% of that number is on the south side of Peoria. And what I'm finding is that a lot of folks are purchasing properties that either are vacant or have structures on them, and they don't understand quite what they're getting themselves into. Once it turns into their name, the city will help them out by expressing to them what needs to be done at that property, and oftentimes that amount that they are being hit by is a shocking number. So this meeting tomorrow at 6 o'clock at the Carver Center is simply to talk about what the code enforcement concerns would be. It's not going to train people on how to go to an auction, simply just to make folks aware of what properties, what challenges properties have. And I've received a communication from Assistant Director Doolin that they will have some properties with the listing of issues that property has. At auction, a person can even buy a property that is listed for demolition, and they may not even be aware of it. And so we're going to go through a lot of that tomorrow. So everyone is invited. There are items on auction that may be in other parts of the city, and that's okay. Anybody can come to this meeting at 6 o'clock at the Carver Center just to find out what the city perspective is on that property that they might acquire. That's the first one. The second announcement is on Friday at the area of Harrison Homes where the playground equipment is, right off of Griswold. There is a need for volunteers to start plantings for the Green Splash area that's there. You know, there's a water, I don't want to call it a water park because it sounds more than it is, but it's a place for kids to get wet, basically. One of those little above ground, you'd have to really get under the thing to drown or anything. But they're looking for volunteers between 8:30 and 10:30 just to come and help plant some green stuff out there. So if you've got a half an hour or an hour, if you can come out to the new Harrison Homes area where the playground equipment is right off Griswold, they would really appreciate your volunteering. And finally, if you've been paying attention, you know that there are at least 3 or 4 groups that have been working on grocery store issues. And to their credit, they don't oftentimes, they're not looking for fanfare or anything like that. These are a group of put up or shut up people. They're not going around, they're going to meetings and making things happen, and they're doing it quietly. And one of those groups has, the outcome from one of those groups is a grocery stores, resident grocery survey that can be either taken online, or if you recall with the initiative that Councilman Regenbach and I were participating in with the Dream Center when there was a transportation survey. So the areas where the transportation surveys were dropped off, local churches, community service organizations, retail establishments around the areas of 61603 and 61605, you will be able to either pick up a hard copy survey, or you can go online and take the survey. The survey is anonymous, and if you receive one of these flyers and you have a smartphone, you can scan the QR code on here and take the survey on your phone. And most everyone has a phone anymore. And so I would invite you to go out and take the survey. You can go out. You can also find the survey online on the website, on the City of Peoria website, under the grocery store link. And as a reminder, that's the link where all the updates, if anything is happening in grocery store issues, it will be on that link. Like I said, these 3 or 4 groups that are working out there, they're working diligently to do some things. We're not going to always talk about what they're doing because there's not always something to report. And like I said, these are put up or shut up people. And so if you're curious about what's going on with grocery stores and you don't know, I would invite you to join one of these 3 or 4 groups. They would love to have any amount of assistance to start to continue to do the research that they're doing, just to come and just support what they're doing, to provide suggestions and input to what they're doing. You can go to the city website once again and find out where those groups are, who they are, where they're meeting, and that type of thing. So if you, with that, I thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ruckriegel.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick announcement. It's hard to believe that the end of the month is already here, and we're looking almost at August, quickly around the corner. Council Member Turner and myself on our first Thursday Coffees of the Month. That is coming up August 2nd at 7:30 here in City Hall. And Senator Chuck Weaver will be addressing the group, taking questions. And we know that the partnership between the city and Springfield is extremely important as we talk about not only our budget issues, but other things facing the state as well. And so all are welcome to attend, and want to put an invite out to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm seeing no further lights for new business. Madam Clerk.
We're at citizens' opportunity to address the City Council.
Citizens to address, we just need your name for the record, and we have a 5-minute speaking limit. Up first is Molly Cruzen-Bishop.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Councilmen and Councilwomen. This is my son, Jack. We love historic architecture, runs in our family. And I think we noticed there's about 175 squares on the ceiling, just so you know. The reason I'm here today is to ask and encourage you to become a sponsor, a walker, or a runner for the 3rd annual Whiskey Baron Run and Walk. I can't believe it's my 3rd year for Central Illinois Landmarks Foundation. Anyone who comes in this building and works every day must have a love for Peoria and a love for history and historic architecture, as we have our logo out on the outside of the front of the building. And the reason that I wanted to start the Whiskey Baron Run was because our benefactor was the wealthiest whiskey baron in the United States, Green Hut, Captain Green Hut. And in our race, you get to, if you run the 5K, you get to walk up past his mansion, or run past his mansion on the corner of Sheridan, Moss, and High, and come back down again to the GAR Hall for a wonderful party with lots of mustaches and shots of whiskey and craft beer and live music and food. We were able to double our numbers last year to from 80 the first year to around 140 or so last year, and it was the building was packed, and it was really a lot of fun. This year we only have 4 historic characters coming back, no history show, but we're going to have Captain Green Hut will be performed by David Stotts. We have Lydia Moss Bradley as Sophie Newton. We have Betty Friedan coming back again, Linda Bolliger, and Kevin Rose will be coming as Richard Pryor. He is the only one that has like a 1 or 2 minute thing, and he's quite funny. He wasn't able to make it last year. Okay. And the race is Saturday, August 11th at 8 a.m. The festivities start at 7:30. The cost is $25. It comes with a really awesome t-shirt. We have a different t-shirt every year, and it's really fun. And packet pickup is Thursday, August 10th from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the GAR Hall. And that is also where the race is held and the party is held afterwards. Everyone can participate because we also have a 1K walk. And if you just want a t-shirt and support a wonderful institution, which is the Grand Army of the Republic Hall at 416 Hamilton, built in 1909, and is really the fundamental start of what started Central Illinois Landmarks Foundation in the early 1970s by Les and Theogene Kenyon, and among others, when it was going to be turned into a parking lot. And I'm so thankful that I get to walk in that building and do event planning and do rentals there. And it's just a beautiful part of our heritage. And so all the proceeds benefit the tuck pointing and some air conditioning issues that we have been working on there. And it's just a great time and just a really positive event. So there are many people in this room who have been sponsors, and I encourage you all, if you love local history and want to help keep a race in downtown Peoria that's really unique and fun and goes to a really good cause, donate, come and show up. It's right before the Ignite event at the Civic Center. We encouraged people to come to ours first and then head on over to the Civic Center. Many of our runners are actually artists that are running from ours literally over to the Civic Center. So anyways, you can sign up and support. Find us on our Facebook pages or call me at 309-857-6844 or email me at mollycruisenbishop@yahoo.com. I hope to see many of you there that day. Thank you.
Next up, we have Joyce Sarant.
Thank you very much. Joyce Herron, 3914 North Donna Lane in Peoria. I'm here this evening to speak for the Friends of Riverfront Park. I'm here to thank the City Council for terminating the River Trail Development Agreement and for today sending in the letter to withdraw the conversion application for Riverfront Park. In the letter, it said that the withdrawal would be to keep Riverfront Park as a park in perpetuity. And so we are committed to working with the city to make that happen. And we want to extend our sincere gratitude to the upwards of 1,000 people who spoke out to save Riverfront Park, who gave our core group such tremendous support in many different ways, and that our members and supporters never gave up. We also thank the National Park Service, who listened to our concerns and responded to many volumes of Friends of Riverfront Park correspondence, multiple conversations by taking action when compliance was needed. We sincerely hope that this decision can be a turning point for the city council, the staff, to embrace being authentic, collaborative partners with citizens and groups to have an open, transparent, workable, and respected community participation process involving the very, very important issues that face our community. Friends of Riverfront Park stands ready to assist in figuring out with the city the complex issues that remain surrounding the resolution of the Southtown to Rocky Glen conversion. Thank you very much.
Next up, we have Elaine Hopkins.
Hi there. I'm Elaine Hopkins, 1825 East Maple Ridge, Peoria. Thank you to everyone who helped save Riverfront Park for the public. It's a lovely place. It's a green space. It could even be enhanced and made even better. It's really a terrific place. I was down there a week or so ago with a friend, and it was great. Now you face resolving the Southtown and Rocky Glen sites. Instead of buying the Cementel property, which floods and has a toxic waste dump on it, there's a better idea. The city likely already owns property that could be used to resolve the Rocky Glen situation. Residential vacant lots in Southtown and elsewhere that could be turned into pocket parks and gardens to enhance their neighborhoods. According to the latest medical research, even small parks improve the mental and physical health of their residents who live nearby. So I would urge you to do the right thing. Drop the Cementel purchase. Thank you for deferring it tonight, but drop it. And look to improve the vacant lots in Peoria to make Peoria a better place to live everywhere. Thanks again. Thanks so much.
Up next, we have Mary Hayes.
Hello. My name's Mary Hayes, and I live at 2915 West Ann Street. And thank you, Zach, for coming and visiting with me yesterday. We had a nice visit. We talked about the food desert and things concerning 61605, and I really appreciate the visit. I also want to put a shout out to Beth Akerson for giving me a ride home, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. I do want to make some announcements. The community center on Sheridan, let me see if I can read this. 2637 North Sheridan Road will have an open house on July the 29th, which is Sunday, from 2 to 4. We will start giving out a food pantry. Okay, Foods Not Bombs will have a free meal at Sheridan and Main Street at the Renaissance Garden. We were going to have beans and rice. The address is 612 West Main Street. It's from 5 to 8. Now, Zach has already promised me that he's going to be there at 5 o'clock, and anybody else that wants to come is welcome to be there for beans and rice. Okay, now I am a member of the Regional Fresh Food Council and have been since the very beginning, since day one of this food desert closing of the Kroger store. The surveys are ready, and Troy is going to bring me the surveys, and I will be passing them out to my neighbors and friends in 61605 and my church members. So put up or shut up.
Up next, we have Ann Smith. Is Ann Smith still here? Okay, up next, we have Mary Clark.
Mary Clark at 2307 Prospect, and when I heard this on the news, I was concerned about the transfer of money from one fund to another, and since this is the night of budget, and it's concerned, like a couple of council members here, where's the money going to come from for that they're going to lose on the Pier Marquette, and the transferring, and we were in our age group brought up that, you know, if you're accountable for your money, you don't take from one account and put it in another to pay one bill, and then you wonder where you're going to get the money for the other account that you took the money out of. And I heard on the news that, and then here on the paperwork, it says the Stormwater Utility Fund, that they want to use that money to pay for this land. Well, this comes under another thing, as the friends of the park over here are talking. We need to keep everything we have along the riverfront green. Forget about the concrete. And if this money is going to come to pay for that property down there for this other purpose, it just doesn't make sense to me. You know, where are you going to get this money from to pay for the fund then that you're taking it from? And if this has got to do with like what you did on Adams Street, then I'm really was disappointed when you said what you did with the warehouse district, that you put all that concrete down there. I think we need to be a little more responsible so we don't have to create funds to do other things for the water waste that comes down. So this is my feeling about this. You don't rob Peter to pay Paul, and keep the green along the river. Thank you.
Rachel O'Reilly.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for letting me speak. Rachel O'Reilly, 61606 area code. I have two things to say or to discuss. The first one is I'm hoping that you all keep Alexis Camry Scott in your thoughts and prayers. There will be a search this Sunday, July 29th. We're meeting at 10:30 a.m. at the old Kroger, 2321 North Wisconsin. So if you can be there, please be there. The fact that she hasn't been found yet is hope. Also, you can visit her on Facebook, Alexis Camry Scott campaign on Facebook, and sign a petition to get the FBI involved. The details of the case and the reason that the FBI has not been involved is in my opinion, suspicious. We're going on 10 months now, and we need justice before her case goes cold. So once again, if you haven't signed the petition, you can go to Alexis Camry Scott campaign on Facebook and sign the petition. And also, if you can make it for that search this Sunday, please do. My second issue is the same one that I've been talking about for a month, the immigration issue. I've recently, at 1 p.m., there was a Ways and Means Committee, the Peoria County Committee. I'm pretty sure they have the authority, that committee, to make Peoria a sanctuary county. It's recently been in the news that ICE has a contract with a juvenile facility in the county. So while the three of the grassroots organizations that are imploring you to make Peoria a welcoming city, if we could make it a county, that'd be even better. That's a bigger geographical area. That way these possible internment camps couldn't pop up in our county. Here are some random statistics. Sorry, I'm a little discombobulated today. 25,000 children are still waiting to be reunited with their parents. Toddlers are being brought to court without legal representation. It was public outcry that ended the separation of families, but a zero tolerance policy wants to replace family separation with possible indefinite family detention. That's these internment camps that I'm talking about. The administration has already tried to get the courts and Congress to overrule the Flores settlement. The 1997 Flores settlement requires unaccompanied minors that are kept in federal custody to be placed in the least restrictive conditions, have their basic necessities met, like food, access to medical treatment, running water, and be separated from adults that aren't related to them. So basic human rights. Also, under that current Flores rules, children accompanied by parents have to be released within 20 days. So either the Trump administration will start keeping family in detention center for as long as it takes to fully adjudicate. All right, I hope you understand what I'm talking about. They're asylum cases, which can take months or possibly years, or it will need to expedite legal process to minimize their time in detention. And also, the administration is using it as a scapegoat, saying there's criminals, they're trying to prevent criminals from happening, and they're also trying to, a lot of people are here, they're asylum seekers, they're escaping violence, and I've told you before, if it's not extreme poverty, it's violence, and this administration is also seeking to undermine those that truly, really need help from violence. So once again, if you could please make Peoria a welcoming ordinance. I understand you've had this ordinance for a year and there's been no discussion. If there's any way that you could, before these elections come up, publicly state if you're for or against it, that way I can know to be for or against you when it's time to vote. Thank you so much.
Next up, we have Joe Martinelli.
Joe Martinelli, and I live at 125 Southwest Jefferson Avenue. I'm here because I am deeply concerned about Peoria's rapidly declining population and this city's overall negligence and inaction on the issue. It isn't hard to see why people have been so quick to leave lately, but sometimes it's really hard to see what you guys have been doing to fix this. I'm not here to complain, though. I'm here to offer solutions of, by, and for the people. One of the most beneficial and immediate improvements we can make, that we can enact on the local level, is to increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour. According to the National Employment Law Project, 42.4% of all Americans make less than $15 an hour, and Peoria is no different. 46.3% of these workers are 35 or older, so it is inexcusable to say that it is not a real career, a minimum wage job, but merely a stepping stone towards something greater. That argument is blind to reality. For instance, are you telling me that you would make that argument to the face of a single mother who's working her entire life away just to make ends meet? So, for every conservative that is against a $15 minimum wage, there are many layers of hypocrisy in your stance that spit in the face of true conservative values. Let's break them down one by one. First of all, a $15 minimum wage would save taxpayers $45 billion a year. $45 billion a year, as that much less money would have to go towards welfare programs. Your inaction on a $15 minimum wage, to be frank, is a middle finger in the face of hardworking taxpayers here in Peoria and everywhere else. And while we're on the subject of welfare, let's consider this next point. Allowing billion-dollar companies like Walmart to pay less than $15 an hour puts the burden on us taxpayers to make up the difference through government-funded programs, while Walmart walks out with all the money. That sounds like welfare to me. Finally, you say you're the party of family values, but I don't see it. How can you possibly say that? How could you possibly say that when you force parents of low-income families to work 2 jobs, 70, 80 hours a week, just to make ends meet? You are robbing mothers and fathers time spent with their children to raise them, read to them, show them right from wrong. It is immoral, un-American, and detrimental to the well-being of our community. Now, I've noticed that city council meetings start with the Pledge of Allegiance. But what does that even mean anymore? I can tell you this much. To me, wherever that flag is flown, we take care of our own. So Mayor Ardis and City Council, wherever this flag is flown, we take care of our own. It's time to start acting like it, or there isn't going to be anybody left. Thank you.
Up next, we have Kevin Jones.
Kevin Jones, 30 Sapphire Point, Morton, Illinois. If you would do me a favor, I don't have the privilege of doing a PowerPoint up on the monitor. So prior to the meeting, I put some documents on each of your desks. So if you would do me a favor and pull it, I want to go over it with you. I want to start off with is I discuss each time I'm here about incompetent community development. Take a look at the very first page. This is an email that I received on June 27th at 9:29 a.m. in the morning. On it, you see a work order has been issued at 1523 South Arago. The City of Peoria's contractor will be completing the work order as soon as possible. For information, please contact your inspector, Rajan Jefferson, the phone number. And then it says, please note that correcting a violation does not nullify a citation if issued for the violation being present. Okay? I signed up, this has probably been 3 months ago, for a notification system through the City of Peoria, which has been nothing more than an utter failure. The way that it works, if there's a violation that exists on one of my properties, I will get an email and a text message. You could opt for one or you can opt for both. I opted to receive both just to make sure that my bases were covered. So in receiving this, I'm like, okay, what has my tenant done? I need to go and check it out. Had just gotten off the interstate in Morton, had turned around, came back down, tried to contact the tenant by phone. They didn't answer. As I'm pulling up on Arago, the tenant calls, and I'm like, did you not cut your lawn? And she goes, I don't know what you're talking about. She goes, we just cut it Saturday. And I'm like, well, I have a notice stating that you haven't. So I'm already 2 blocks away from the property. I go over there and didn't need cut at all. The yard was more than perfect. I then asked the tenant if he had a problem if I videotaped him telling me when he cut the lawn, and we went around the entire property to show that there were no violations on it. There were no violations. So then I come down to City Hall. I ask for Rajan. Rajan comes to me, very polite young gentleman, and I'm like, Rajan, why am I getting this notice? He looked at it. He goes, I have no idea. He goes, I didn't do this. And I said, well, here's my notification. I signed up for this. He said, well, let me go get one of my admins. So I want to be clear. Here's who your admins are. You have Ross Black, you have Joe Doolin, and you have Ashley Elias. Those are your admins. So Ashley Elias came out, and I said to Ashley, can you tell me what this is about? He goes, it was a violation. I'm like, the violation doesn't exist. Here's the video. Who wrote it up? An admin wrote it up. I'm like, okay, who is the admin? Again, it was an admin. I get that, Ashley. I'm asking you, who was the admin that wrote it up? An admin. I didn't like that answer. You'd already wasted an hour of my time and me having to go down to a property that didn't have any violations on it. That's the answer that I got for that. Go to the next page.
Mr. Jones, and I stopped the clock, so this is not on your time. You got a minute and 20 seconds, so I don't want you to get mad when you run out. So you're back on the clock.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to ask this, and Eric, prior to the meeting, I'm going to ask that you give me just time to run through this so I'm not sounding like an auctioneer. I want to be clear. These are things that need to be addressed. We can do it one way or another, ladies and gentlemen. If you would like, I guarantee you I can fill every seat out there with an investor in Peoria at every meeting, and we'll take up 5 minutes of your time with each of those. That's not what I want. That's not how I want to spend my Tuesday evenings. But if that's what you need, I'm more than willing to make that happen, and I'm positive I can get that done for you. So if I go over my 5 minutes, Mr. Turner, I'm going to ask that you ask that I get an extra 2 or 3 minutes to finish up, and I'll try to wrap this up. Understand my frustrations of having to deal with this, and then you telling me you're going to cut me off in a minute or two. Bear with me. I'm going to move along. I want you to look at this very first one. Number one, I want to note, these were not done by any inspectors. They were done by your incompetent staff, the 3 that I mentioned, not your inspectors. Your inspectors do a good job. And this was not going to be part of my presentation tonight, but I'm going to share a real quick story with you. I received a call Friday at about 3 p.m. from one of your inspectors, and he said, Kevin, he goes, I got a complaint on one of your properties. And I'm like, tell me what's going on. There were 3 things that he wanted done. Can I continue?
Mr. Jones. You know, here's the problem, Mr. Jones. When we start, we have a council rule, it's 5 minutes. So we make an exception, and then there's another exception next week and one after that. I mean, so it's the council rules.
Okay, I'm asking Mr. Turner, whose exact words were, I'm sorry that you were treated like shit at the last meeting prior to this. Oh. So that's exactly what he said to me.
Well, Mr. Jones, your time is up. Thank you.
We'll do it on the council. We'll do it out at City Hall.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Lily Fulton.
Hello, I'm Lily Fulton, and I'm a Peoria resident in District 2, and I would like to add my support to the welcoming ordinance. I would please encourage you to support this ordinance. You probably know that it would prevent the police from collaborating with ICE in any way, which is essential for keeping many Peoria residents safe. There are over 1,000 immigrant residents in Peoria, and many of those members of our community are either have relatives, or maybe they themselves are still working on going through all of the legal processes to get citizenship. And as you may know, that is a long and strenuous process. And we need to make sure that we keep our community members safe until then. And we also need to protect them from the fear that one of their family members or or maybe themselves will be questioned, or especially right now, many people may just live with the fear that one of their family members will be taken away, or perhaps their entire family, simply for wanting a better life, which that's what America is supposed to be all about. It's supposed to be a chance to have a better life, right? And we want to be able to give that opportunity to these hardworking people who may be fleeing violence, who maybe want a chance at hope. And I want to be part of a city that gives them that chance. Because I believe that the members of our community who are immigrants are valued and are hardworking, and that they do not leech off the system. You can look it up and you can find, if you think that people who are immigrants are coming and are leeching off of welfare systems, this is not the case. Throughout the country, our immigrant community members have not taken away from the money from the United States, but have earned money for the United States, and they work so hard, and they work in jobs that you or I would not be willing to take because they are so strenuous and pay so little, such as janitorial work and such as picking our crops, picking our vegetables. We need people to do these jobs, and there are people willing there. And so we should let them come and have this chance. And we should be able to do that. And in Peoria, we have this wonderful opportunity to show the surrounding communities that we can do the right thing, and that we can we care about our community members, about all of them, and that we can be an example for the rest of Illinois, perhaps. We have this opportunity, and I don't think we should turn it down. And I think we should support all of our community members who may be right now worried about their family members. Nobody should have to live with the fear that their mother or grandmother or child or sister or brother would be taken away from them. I cannot stress that enough. One more point is that we have all been hearing about family separation that is happening at the...
Lily, your time has expired. Thank you. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk?
We do not have an executive session, so we are at adjournment.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn by Councilman Graham, seconded by Councilmember Sear. Please cast your ballots. That motion passes unanimously. We'd like to thank H. Wayne Wilson and his listening audience at WCBU as well as Cable Channel 22. This meeting is adjourned.